Hi, I'm Regie Routman. Yesterday, I shared with you how I might write a poem with kids, whether you're a teacher or a parent, if you're working with other teachers, if it's just for yourself. And I was thinking about, and you heard me think aloud about what I was noticing. I narrowed down my topic to what I was noticing in the world. And in particular, I decided to write about dandelions. And so, what I want to show you today is just how I'm thinking about writing the poem, what it looks like when I'm actually writing it. I have not done any kind of rehearsal, don't have notes on it. Um, you're too busy, too anxious to do anything that's hard. The thing that I love about poetry writing for us and for kids is that it's fluid. You don't have to worry about punctuation. I would say for your kids, not to worry about spelling right now. You can lay it out on the page any way you want. It's very freeing. And I also like it for the equity issues. Um, it is a great equalizer. I've seen kids that have really struggled as readers and writers come to life when they write a poem. They can write a poem in just 3 or 4 words. And so when you're working with your kids and with teachers, you want to focus on the strengths. We're not looking for how can they improve, what can they do better, but just really celebrating the joy of writing and what we're able to put down on paper. Now, this morning, when I got into the shower, I've been thinking about my poem. And why is this poem so important to me? It's about dandelions, a lowly weed in the world. And I realized it's because the world looks different to me now. And I thought, wow, that could be the first line of my poem. It's about an hour ago, I was thinking about that. Why dandelions? And I think because I hadn't noticed them before. I went outside my home this morning. I wanted to pick a bunch for you and just kind of look at the beauty of the yellow, that sunny yellow, that lemon yellow. I actually had picked them for my house last week, which I'd never done before, as a bouquet of flowers, not weeds. And lo and behold, they were gone. The only thing that was left was these puff balls. I showed you a picture of that yesterday. And when I was a kid, I used to blow those. Some of you probably did that too. And the seeds went everywhere. Um, so the picture that I have left is the picture in my mind and the picture that I showed you of a field of dandelions. So let me get a piece of paper, stick with me for a minute, and let me start to write. Now, normally I would write on a just a piece of paper in a notebook, but that's too hard, at least for me right now. So I'm going to compose on the screen in front of you, and you'll see my thinking as I'm going along. I don't know what I want my title to be. I really don't have a clue. So right now, and don't worry about your title. You can always come back to it. The thing about poetry and all writing is you can revise at any time. So right now, I think I'll just call it Dandelions. And the first line, I think I'm going to stick with that I came up with in my head in the shower. And one of the things to know about being a writer is that you're writing all the time. Even when you're not writing, you're thinking. Um, the world looks different now. Um, take, for example, a dandelion. Now, I do a lot of rereading because the big thing about poetry is how does it sound? How does it look on the page? And all of this is white space. Dandelions. The world looks different to me now. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. Now, I could have moved this here, and let's hear how it sounds this way. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I think it sounds better like this. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion, I used to think a dandelion was a weed. Now I see it's also a flower, a superfood. Um, an inspiration. I'm not sure I like that. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed. Now I think it's also a lovely yellow flower. Once I started, once once I started really looking at dandelions, I began to think of them of sunshine in a dreary world. Let's see. Dandelions. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed. Now I think it's also a lovely yellow flower. Once I really, I'm thinking about rhythm here. Once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really looked, I began to think of them as sunshine in a dreary world. I think I'm going to get rid of that. Dandelions. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed. But now I think, and notice how I'm changing the wording based on the rhythm and how it sounds and how it looks on the page. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed, but now I think it's also a lovely flower. Once I really looked at dandelions, once I really looked, and I might make that all caps to emphasize it, once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really saw them, I began to think of these lowly weeds in a different way. Sunshine in a dreary world. Greens that could be superfoods. Flowers that I could pick and place in my kitchen and place in a vase. I'm going to go back. Dandelions. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed, but now I think it's also a lovely flower. It's also a lovely flower. Once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really saw them, I began to think of those lowly weeds in a different way. Sunshine in a dreary world. Greens that could be superfoods, making glorious, and this is what I showed you yesterday briefly before I had that computer glitch, making glorious and delicious salads. Flowers too, that I could pick and place in a vase to give me comfort. So it is these days. Everything looks a bit different. Everything looks a bit different. The trick is, I think, to look closely in new ways and find pieces of joy wherever we can. Now, I got to read this again, of course, and I'm not thinking about is it good? It doesn't really matter so much as it's something that I want to keep for myself about how I was looking at the world, and probably a good idea to date it. So I'm going to read it again and see what I want to change. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed, but now I also think, I'm going to change that. I also think, oops, I also think it's a lovely flower. Once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really saw them, I began to think of those lowly weeds. And notice you will correct your spelling as you go along. Writing is a recursive process, and that means that you're drafting, you're thinking, you're rereading, you're revising all of a piece. They're not separate acts that happen in a sequential way. The world looks different to me now. Excuse me. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed, but now I also think it's a lovely yellow flower. Once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really saw them, I began to think of those lowly weeds in a different way. Sunshine in a dreary world. Greens that could be superfoods. Greens that could be superfoods. As glorious and delicious salads. Flowers that I could pick and place in a vase to give me comfort. So it is these days. Everything looks a bit different. The trick is, I think, to look closely in new ways and find pieces of joy wherever we can. I think I'm okay with that right now, except for the title. And I want you to see that didn't take that long. I'm not timing myself, but I think it was about 5 minutes. And if the topic is meaningful to you, you'll be able to write pretty fluently. Now, I'm not saying this was easy for me. It wasn't, because I'm doing this in front of an audience that I don't know. It's hard, and I'm nervous, but the topic is important to me, and I will save this poem, put it in my notebook, but I do need a title, and I'm not sure. Dandelions might be okay for right now. Could say delightful dandelions. I think I'm going to stick with dandelions right now and read it one more time. Dandelions. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed, but now I also think it's a lovely flower. I think I'm going to leave out yellow. Once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really saw them, I began to think of those yellow weeds in a different way. Sunshine in a dreary world. Greens that could be superfoods in glorious and delicious salads. Flowers that I could pick and place in a vase to give me comfort. So it is these days. Everything looks a bit different. The trick is, I think, to look closely in new ways and find places of joy. Well, let's go back to, I can find pieces of joy wherever we can. I'm not happy with that. I might go back and read it again. Now, notice that I've probably read this, I don't know, maybe 6 times. And this is a big part of poetry is you want to read it, you want to look at how does it look on the page? How does it sound to you? Now, when you do this with your kids and whoever that you're working with, you want to keep it on the positive. This pandemic time is too difficult to focus on improve. We need to find moments of delight for kids when we're working with them. And poetry is just a great way to do that. Now, that was hard for me. I want to tell you, it was not easy. I was authentic with you. I didn't practice, except when I was taking a shower, that first line came to me, but that's because the poem was important to me, and I will save it. In our next video, I'm going to be coaching Gail. We may be doing some writing together, but showing you more possibilities for writing poems, what you might do with your kids, with your students, and I hope that it will, writing poems yourself and with your kids will bring some joy into your lives at a time when it is not so easy to find joy. Okay, until next time.